So now I would like to take a moment to welcome our keynote speaker, Denise O'Dunn. Denise O'Dunn is the founder of Balance and Bliss Ayurveda and Yoga. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner and instructor, a licensed massage therapist, and yoga teacher. She began studying yoga in 1969. Denise received her degree in Ayurveda from the Ayurvedic Center for Wellbeing, the Florida Vedic College, in 2005. She is the founder, director, and the primary instructor of Ayurveda at the Florida Academy of Ayurveda, a post secondary school for professional education in Ayurveda that began in 2011. Alumni graduate. Denise is also the founding member of the Ayurveda Association of Florida and the National Council of Ayurvedic Education. She's a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, member of the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, and she's registered with Yoga Alliance as an experienced teacher at the 500-hour level. Denise lives in Florida, but her online practice, offering Ayurvedic consultations, classes, and programs, as well as private yoga sessions, serves clients across the country. I don't think that I can do justice to sharing the way in which she teaches and has brought knowledge of Ayurveda to life in all our lives. And so I'm so honored that she offered to be the keynote speaker here for us today. And we wanted to make sure that this was open and available to everybody to join. So with that, I would like to welcome Denise.
Thank you. It's beautiful to be here with some of you, of course, I know so well, and I'm so glad that I do, and others that I'm just meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And I know that, for me, coming the first time to Ayurveda and beginning to explain that to us when there's such a wealth of knowledge and you have this amazing way of bringing it into what we call bite-sized pieces so that we can begin to understand and then see the fullness of Ayurveda later on in our life. So I'm excited about what you'll be sharing with us today to be able to give everyone an introduction on Ayurveda.
What I would love to do this evening is share a PowerPoint presentation. It wouldn't be my teaching style if I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation to share, and my alumni understand that. But Ayurveda recognizes that we all learn in such different ways based on our nature. And some of us are very visual, others are more auditory, and others kinesthetic. And so, my hope as a teacher or as a presenter is that I can offer you information that everybody can grasp it. So I do tend to use graphic tools to teach, and I hope that you find that helpful. And then beyond that, I would love just to have some casual conversation with you. There'll be time for questions and answers. If there's anything that I present to you this evening that you would like to know more about, maybe in general or about you particularly, I'd be happy to answer those questions as long as time allows before our beautiful musical medicine session. I'll start the presentation because it gives the basic, the origin of Ayurveda as well as the makeup of the doshas. That this, for some of you that's new to Ayurveda and to this doshic language we're going to be speaking this weekend, I feel like it'll give you a good foundation. You'll be introduced to the language here, and then we'll take it from there. Does that sound good?
Wonderful. Thank you,
Okay.
Denise.
Ayurveda, Understanding the Doshas with Denise O'Dunn. Ayurveda is the science of life, or the study of natural law. We have archaeological, astronomical, astrological evidence of Ayurveda's existence for many thousands of years. But we could also say that Ayurveda has always existed, as it's the study of nature. The rishis, the holy men of India, through their intense desire to end suffering, went into deep meditation and received the original information of Ayurveda through direct source.
It was also through their observation of nature that this system was created. Ayurveda was originally an oral tradition, but came into its written form in the Vedas, where we still have original documentation of this system. Ayurveda is a way of life that creates harmony by teaching you to honor your individual nature while consciously following the rhythms and cycles of the natural world. The more you understand yourself and your unique nature, the better you can make decisions for your own personal balance. Ayurveda is based on a system including the 5 Mahabhutas, the great elements. The elements that we refer to in Ayurveda are ether or space, air, fire, water, and earth. These 5 elements pair up into 3 combinations to form the primary forces of nature called doshas. The 3 doshas, or primary forces of nature, are vata, made up of ether and air, pitta, made up of fire and water, kapha, made up of water and earth. Let's look at the doshas individually. Vata, made up of ether and air. Here are the qualities that vata contains. The primary qualities are light, cold, and dry, also holding qualities of mobile, subtle, clear, rough, quick or sharp, diluted or liquid. The Pitta dosha, made of fire and water, have primary qualities of light, hot, unctuous or oily, and also qualities of mobile, liquid, diluted or wet, sharp or quick. The way we can relate to the sharp nature of Pitta is the idea of steam. It's hot, wet, and sharp or piercing. The Kapha dosha is made of water and earth, having primary qualities of heavy, cold, unctuous or oily, also holding qualities of static or stable, gross, cloudy or sticky, smooth or slimy, slow or dull, also soft, liquid, wet, solid, and dense. We recognize the doshas in nature. As we look at our environment, the Vata environment would be a place that's cold, dry, with wide open space, rough terrain. The Pitta environment would be a warm and humid place, steamy, with lush tropical foliage. The Kapha environment would be cool and damp, foggy, where the air is still. Ayurveda also recognizes the influence of the times of day. Assuming that sunrise is 6 a.m., the first Vata period would be 4 hours before the sun rises, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. In that time, we start to sleep lighter. Perhaps we wake up, fall back asleep. It's the time that birds are chirping, animals are moving and starting their day. And we're designed to do the same thing. For eons, yogis have known that this is the time of morning for meditation and pranayama. It's time to visualize your day, to become inspired about the day ahead of you. The second Vata time of day is 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and the quality is similar, but it may be noticed in a decline of energy. You feel like you need to nap or snack to get on with the rest of the day. The Pitta time of day is 10 to 2, daytime, 10 to 2, dark time. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Ayurveda says it's a good time to have your largest meal of the day, when we have Agni, the digestive fire, available to support the digestion of that meal. It's also the time we have clear perception. It's time to have meetings, to plan, to be most productive. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., Ayurveda suggests it's time to be asleep. It's during that time that we are absorbing and assimilating everything that we took in that day, from our food to our thoughts. If we're still awake after 10 p.m., we might find it difficult to fall asleep because we have the Pitta energy that has created a second wind, the ability to stay up and have more productive time. The Kapha time is from sunrise, or in this example, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then also 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. In the early morning, as the sun is rising, traditionally the yogis understood they were going from their pranayama and meditation into the Surya Namaskar, the sun salutation, to greet the day. And then there's good physical energy that would follow based on Kapha influence, so the asana practice could follow. It's also the time of morning to eat first meal, upon hunger, a lighter meal, something that will get you through to Pitta mealtime at noon. It's the time of day to empty our bladder and bowels. It's the time to do our dincharya, or daily routine of self-care. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., Ayurveda suggests it's time to wind down, to let go of the details of the day. The lightest meal of the day should be at Kapha time, easily digestible, like a nourishing soup. And then falling asleep during Kapha time is easier. We naturally become sleepy during this time, maybe 8:30 or 9 o'clock, you notice. But if you push through that time and you enter into Pitta time of night, 10 p.m. or later, it'll be more difficult to fall asleep. Ayurveda recognizes the seasons or weather and their doshic contributions. Vata season in temperate regions would be fall, early winter. Here in Florida, it's any day that's drier, cooler. Even our changeable weather in fall would influence us by its irregular nature. Vata weather is cold to cool, dry, windy, clear, and changeable. Pitta season would be summer, and here in Florida, of course, most of our year. Warm to hot, humid, radiant sun, bright, piercing. It's the quality of Pitta season. And Kapha season in temperate regions would be late winter and spring. Cool to cold, but wet, cloudy, misty, heavy. It's any day here in Florida that's cloudy, rainy. We also look at the life stages and the way that we're influenced doshically. Vata life stage is the stage for mature adult to elderly. It might be around 50s or 60s that a person enters into this stage of their life. For women, it's easy to denote. It's a year past their last menses. It's a time that we're more influenced by the qualities of Vata, drier skin perhaps, thinning hair, less efficient systems. Pitta stage of life is from puberty through to our 50s or 60s, youth to mature adult. It's the time that we're most productive. It's a long period of life that we're given this Pitta energy to support us in our planning and our productivity. Kapha stage of life is from birth to puberty. It's the fastest growth period due to Kapha's contribution. It's a time of developing. So we begin each life with this Kapha influence that will see us through to our Pitta years as we start as young students to move out into the world, to become more independent, to contribute to ourselves, our families, our community. And in our Vata years, although we'll have the influence of Vata, it doesn't mean that we have to stop being productive. The more we understand the influences of the doshas, the more we can help to keep them balanced. So all through life, regardless of the influence of the doshas, we feel balanced. Ayurveda recognizes the doshas in body type, their structure, and their features. A Vata body type is a person who's taller or shorter than average, with thin limbs, slight musculature. Skin that is darker toned skin, even among different races, darker toned skin, but thinner skin, cooler, drier skin. The hair of the Vata person will be a thin amount of hair, but hair that is coarse or curly. Facial features will be longer, narrow, thin, small, but irregular. Vata is the dosha that contributes to any irregular patterns. So Vata person's eyes, one might be slightly different than the other, or the eyes might move or blink quite a bit. They might have irregular teeth that required orthodontics. The physiology of the Vata person, their internal workings, light, dry, cold, irregular. They have a slight appetite. Their digestion might be irregular, causing burping or bloating. Their elimination, dry, hard, irregular, creating constipation. Their energy is quick. They move fast, they talk fast, but their endurance is low. They're like the sprinter in running. They can run fast, but not for the long distance. Their metabolism is fast, it's quick. They're geared up a little quicker than most, and that's why they stay so thin throughout their lives. Their immunity is lower. Among a group of people, they might catch the cold or flu more often. It's better to understand that every dosha has its inherent strengths and weaknesses. It's better that we understand that so we can support the weaknesses and manage the strengths from becoming excessive. The Pitta body type, they're of an average height and a medium or proportionate build. Pitta is considered the middle dosha because of the lineup of the elements from the most subtle to the most dense: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Pitta is in the middle with fire and water elements. So many features of the Pitta type are medium, average, moderate. They have light skin that might burn easily in the sun. Freckles, moles would be common. And sensitive skin, sensitive to the sun, sensitive to chemicals. They may get rashes easily. They sweat proficiently. The Pitta type has a medium amount of hair, but fine and silky hair. Hair that goes gray or balding earlier in life due to the natural tendency of heat to rise and affect the hair follicles. The facial features of Pitta, medium size features proportionately placed. The internal workings of Pitta, efficient. Good digestion, unproblematic, unless Pitta is in excess. Elimination, like clockwork, unproblematic. The energy of Pitta is dynamic, but stable. They have good endurance for their very productive days. They have moderate metabolism. If they gain a few pounds, they can lose those pounds easily with focus. And they have good immunity. They might get sick every once in a while, but they tend to come around quickly. The Kapha body type, taller or shorter than average, but with larger bones and fuller figure. The taller the Kapha person, they'll be broad, stocky. And the shorter, rounder, like the earth itself. Their skin is cool and damp to the touch. Their hair, abundant amount of hair and thick strands of hair. Their facial features, rounder face, larger features, broader, fuller. Their physiology is regular, but slow. Kaphas are very sensuous. They chew their food slowly. They enjoy the taste of food. Food moves through their GI tract slower, and it's eliminated more slowly. Kaphas have slower energy, but the highest endurance. They're the long-distance runner. Their metabolism is slower, so they may gain weight easily and have more difficulty losing that weight. Their immunity is the strongest. Kaphas, by nature, conserve energy and take good care of themselves. As we look at the personality of the doshas, the Vata person is lively, enthusiastic, happy-go-lucky, skipping through life, riding with the clouds. They're artistic, creative, inventive, out-of-the-box thinking, inspiring others. The Pitta personality is intense. They have good perception. They see things easily. They process them efficiently. They convey them accurately. They're leaders of industry, corporations, and of countries. They're problem solvers. They're public speakers. They're passionate, and they have a lot that they want and need to accomplish in this life. The Kapha personality, loyal, serving, nurturing. They're loving people, sweet-natured. Now that we understand the nature of each dosha in an individual, we also understand that there can be excess of dosha. If a Vata individual is living in a cold and dry environment, then they may start to carry excess of that dosha. To balance the doshas, we look for opposite actions. For the Vata type, in the slide, we see a person in a bound angle pose with her head to the ground, bringing in earth energy. This is the Kapha dosha that will help to balance her Vata nature. In the top row, center slide, we see a tropical, lush environment like Pitta, and that Pitta heat and unctuous contribution will help to balance the Vata individual. In the right slide, in the top row, we see a woman, most likely Vata by nature, but also in her Vata years, and she's gardening. She's out in nature. That will help to keep her balanced. In the lower left slide, a woman who is floating, which Vatas like to float, but she's floating in water, which is going to help keep her grounded. And I like to think this is a warm body of water, which would be all the more balancing. In the bottom right slide, there's a treatment where the individual is having her feet bathed in warm water in a copper bowl with river stones below her feet. There's Pitta and Kapha balancing her. Air and ether are always rising. This is a treatment that helps to bring energy down to ground her. Balancing excess of Pitta, we need measures that are cooling, calming. In the top left slide, we see a woman meditating. She's meditating indoors in a cool room with white features, keeping her balanced. The middle slide, we see the fella outdoors. It looks like he's been active, but we'll imagine this is first of the morning. Pitta shouldn't exercise in the heat of the day. And he's staying hydrated. Pitta types sweat easily, so they have to replenish their fluid. Top right slide, here we have a woman clearly enjoying the snow and the very cold weather. The bottom left slide is showing a woman receiving an abhyanga, a traditional Ayurvedic massage, with the hands displaying very rhythmic movement. Pittas are always looking for regular, synchronized rhythms. The bottom right slide is showing a woman who has taken a moment to be in the shade, which is balancing for Pitta types. But the pink sneakers are showing that she's not taking herself too seriously. She's allowing herself to have fun, and that's important for the intense nature of the Pitta type. To balance the slow and potentially stagnant nature of Kapha, we need movement and stimulation and warmth. The top left picture of the slide is showing a woman running, which of course will help to stimulate her circulation of blood and lymph. In the middle picture, in the top row, we see a fella in a challenging asana, opening himself in this rotation and in an exotic place. Kapas can become stagnant in their need for routine, so it can be balancing to get them out of their routine on occasion. The top right picture is showing a treatment called Urdhvatan. It's a dry massage with powders that are warming and stimulating. The bottom left picture is showing a couple cycling, which of course is invigorating, but the fact that they're doing this as a couple, when Kapha becomes in excess, they may need another person to come in and encourage them to get out, to move. And the bottom right picture is showing a woman, Kapha in nature, with her arms open wide and chanting to the ethers. Ayurveda explains that bliss is our natural state of being. Ayurveda gives us an understanding of our true nature, an awareness of the way we are affected by the influences we encounter, and the guidance along our path to balance and pure bliss. Namaste.
Hope you found that helpful. If Ayurveda is brand new to you, we discovered some of the most fundamental principles of the elements, as well as how they are combined together to make the doshas. And these doshas, these elements, hold certain qualities. And that means that your dominant dosha, which we have all three doshas in our natural makeup, but we are dominant in one. We have a secondary, in the lineup, and a third. And based on that lineup for you, those ratios, you have these qualities. Ayurveda recognizes that there was a perfect time when you were conceived, and that it had all of the purpose for your reason for being in mind. So your birth parents contributed their doshic nature to you, to your doshic nature. And in that moment of conception, everything, the time of day, the location, even the lifestyle habits of your parents, all of that contributed to you doshically. And you continue to develop in utero while you were still in the womb. Everything that your mother encountered, she being your vehicle, of course, you encountered as well. You were influenced by these doshas. But at that moment of birth, at first breath, it all locked in to your prakriti, your original nature, that combination, your body, mind, constitution. And in Ayurveda, we recognize that as perfection. It's for your dharma, or for your purpose, your reason for being here, at this time and in this place. So every dosha, based on its characteristics, have certain inherent strengths and weaknesses. And Ayurveda is a science, so we don't try to sugarcoat anything. We say, yep, your nature is going to lead you in a certain direction. But it also says we know how, though, through typically pairing opposite actions to create a balance for you so that your nature does not become excessive, that you're able to do what you're here to do in the most productive way, in the most balanced way, the most harmonious way.
Thank you so much, Denise.
You're so welcome, Helen.
I love the music that
Yes,
was
I
with
want to
the
give
video.
credit to my husband, Kevin. He is the producer here at Balance and Bliss, so he does our AV stuff.
I loved your presentation in the way that you highlighted how you can see the doshas in the various well, in pretty much everything that we've seen in our life. You've gone over recognizing the dosha in the physical bodies, as we did for the last portion. We talked about the personality, recognizing the qualities of the doshas in the personality. Um, in nature, the seasons of nature, the within the time of the day, also, what time of the day, and recognizing that. And what I find so beautiful is because once you can see those qualities, you can recognize them as they are occurring, as you're having relationships and connections, with people. And I'm going to, ask you to expand on something, because I already know that that's usually a question that comes up. So I'm going to go ahead and, and begin to
Certainly.
ask that question, um, because even though the doshas have so much variety, we feel many times that it's limiting, because no one wants to be, but oh, I'm this and that's it.
Mhm.
We all want to be unique. We all want to be, special in some way. I think sometimes even we find that hard when we look in astrology. We'll be doing some of that this weekend. Is sometimes we find it limiting. Oh well, I'm not really like all Capricorns. That you know what that is. And I know that sometimes people find that limiting, and I know that that's something that gets brought to your attention a lot. Would you expand a little bit on how you look at the doshas, and how they are actually more unlimited than we even thought before?
Absolutely. And yes, you're right. That is a very common question, and it's a good one. So if we look at three doshas, and we understand that they're made up of five elements, total, each with two dominant doshas, we then further break the three doshas, the five elements, into 20 classical qualities. So these are qualities that are given to us in our original text of Ayurveda. And they're common qualities that we definitely understand. If Ayurveda and dosha is new for you, the qualities are not. They're hot and cold and everything in between. Heavy, light, everything in between, dry or oily, everything in between. And it's that everything in between, I think, that is most important. And as you were saying, Helen, we're not only like my two dominant doshas are Pitta and Vata, and yet I have a certain amount of fire and water in my Pitta nature, a certain amount of ether and air in my Vata nature. But of the fire and water, which am I more dominant in? And I would say for me, I am more dominant water. Of ether and air, which am I more dominant? I believe I'm more air. Well, of water, am I a raging waterfall or a still pond? So the qualities of the elements of the doshas make you unique. There has never been, nor will there ever be, a person exactly like you, because dosha element qualities. But again, you're not only hot or cold, you could be anywhere in between, and it's that it's that range that makes it unlimited, combinations of doshas that really make you you. And that even though you are made of a amount, a ratio, a given amount of these elements, at these doshas at birth, you are continuously, as you mentioned, influenced by the doshas. So if you are drier by nature in the fall in vata season or in more vata stage of life, that dry quality will come up again. So Ayurveda is never finished looking at you and assessing you, if because we have to consider you in the moment. What you were like in 10 years ago is a very important place to visit, but where you are in the moment is what's most important. And so, yes, we are all absolutely unique. And that is why there is not a diet or a one path or way to go in Ayurveda, rather, understanding yourself, like your retreat is all about, and honoring that. Those of you who are students of mine here know that my answers typically are very long. And I will go around a few places and I will come back. But I'm inspired to share with you, especially this evening, because as I'm so honored to be here with you, one of the, I want to take this opportunity to remind each of you that we are not only unique and just because of that, so beautiful in our own nature, and we begin to honor that. We go, wow, there's a reason I'm the way I am. And I mean, that just couldn't be better. I might not be like that person. I might not look like them, might have different characteristics than they have. But how beautiful it is that they're who they are, that they look and act and feel and function just like they do, because that's meant for them. It's for their purpose, their dharma. And so Ayurveda not only gives us this beautiful understanding of ourself, helping us to make better decisions about how to keep our own personal balance, to maintain and or regain that balance, but also not only accepting, but truly honoring, that we're all different and how beautiful, that truly is.
Thank you, Denise.
Yes, you're
I
welcome.
actually wanted to follow up. Mute.
Just wanted to make sure you see the question. Linda asks if Denise would expand upon the doshas with respect to the parents' influence.
You have a doshic lineage, basically. Your mother and your birth father, they had their influences doshic from their parents, and on and on and on, as many generations as you can imagine. So that does, though, mold and kind of transmute to each individual. So your birth father and mother had doshic contributions that contributed to you directly. It's like genetics, if I could put it in that way. However, the mind and emotions, the lifestyle, the choices, that your parents made, not only at the time of conception, but that leading up to it, contributed to you. I know we can even talk about this in clinical science too, certainly. But from a doshic perspective, everything has a certain quality. It comes from a certain element and dosha accordingly. So you were given this influence or these contributions right at the time of conception. Now, Ayurveda also recognizes it's beyond the scope of our discussion really tonight, but I just want to tap a little bit into not only the doshic qualities, but the major qualities, we call them the mahagunas, or the sattva, rajas, and tamas of the mind. So you were also influenced in this way too, through their mind consciousness. So at the time of conception, um, you began, but your journey just really started there, because in utero, for this 9-month approximate time that you were within the womb, your mother, everything that she ate and thought and encountered and experienced, had an influence that had qualities, and those qualities, also contribute to you. And it's one of the reasons that we can better understand siblings, of the same birth parents being quite so different. The time of year they were conceived, what their parents were at that time, what their we call it Vikriti. It's this current state of doshic affairs. So where they were in that moment contributed to, each you and if you have siblings. So I think that that's a fun thing to consider. It's like, oh, that explains a little bit, so I hope that that was helpful. It's just uh, something that we can definitely, I believe, relate to, and why we are who we are, why we're similar maybe to our parents, or maybe in my family, we say sometimes things skip a generation. Like you might have certain traits that you recognize more from a grandparent than a parent. But the point is, it came through, that family line.
Thank you, Denise. I'm glad actually with that question from Linda, because that's where I was going to ask you a little more about the Prakriti and the Vikriti, because you were sharing so beautifully about balance and how Ayurveda doesn't have the perfect diet or the exact diet for everyone to follow. Could you expand a little bit on what balance means in Ayurveda?
Mhm.
Because
So
what are you balancing? Yeah, in
yes,
which
what are you
direction?
balancing to?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very important. So in Ayurveda, because without knowing this, one might think that we're talking about an even amount of all three doshas, but that is actually not common at all. What balance is in Ayurveda is understanding your original nature, knowing your combination, how much vata, pitta, kapha you had at first breath. And how would you ever know that? Well, that's where, assessments come in. And so it is balancing you, keeping you or helping to maintain that balance of your original combination of doshas. So I am Pitta Vata dominant by birth, and my Kapha, contributes. We have to have all three for sure. And now into my Vata years, into my latter years, not nearly close to done, but moving along, I experience more Vata. So now in my Pitta years, and that from puberty to menopause for women, it's easy to note, I was vying more for keeping Pitta balance, my fire water doshas. And now, well into my Vata years, my journey is more to keep the Vata qualities balanced. So, because I live in Florida, it is, not temperate. We have a very consistent kind of Pitta season. But if I lived in a place that had very, very cold weather, it would be all the more important that I'm doing things that are nourishing, warming, heavy grounding, like cooked stews and things like that. So balance in Ayurveda is understanding your original combination of doshas and then making choices, understanding how to make those choices to maintain that ratio. Often, when I see clients, they might have one dosha that is more of their dominant dosha, like I'm Pitta Vata by nature, but right now I would say that I am Vata Pitta in my Vikriti, my current state. And so my job is to help manage that Vata. So and it is a constant act. Balance is not a done deal. We're not like, oh, now I'm balanced, because every breath we're different. Every breath something has shifted. We have a certain quality or a certain element that we've experienced. So, but the beautiful thing is Ayurveda clearly lets us know how to do that, and you're going to learn so much about that this weekend.
So I was my follow up question to that actually is, as you were sharing about the current state, a lot of times, I feel okay, it's at this moment, but there's so much that we encounter throughout the day that we are receiving influence of the different doshas in different ways, whether it's in personality, whether it's in nature or where we're living or circumstances and situations. Would you share a little bit what your thoughts of what is it that we encounter throughout the day that influences that balance?
Yes, everything. So, the decisions we make in a day, those decisions are creating doshic influences. And the decisions are the food that we're eating in the course of the day. Was it a light, dry cracker that we had? Or was it a warm, unctuous soup? And so all through the day, everything we're eating is giving us qualities and doshic influences. In the course of our relationships, where do you work? What doshic types do you work with? And if you are in a workplace 8 hours a day, that's a big influence of your day. How much do you commute in the course of a day? In other words, are you virtual? I'm right now fully virtual, so I commute very little. So are you on the go a lot? There's more vata. Or are you very stationary? There's more kapha. And even, of course, the relationships we have in our, um, not only in our workplace, but in our personal lives. What influence do we have from our spouses or significant others, our children, our parents? um, Everything in the course of the day, the where we live, the weather currently, the hurricane, the tropical storm. Most recent, at least here, I realize you're all from different places. Florida just had a good crazy tropical storm come through, so that gives us a big doshic influence. Everything manifests that we experience in this earth and this planet has a quality to it. It's made up of certain elements and therefore gives us a doshic effect.
I like the word that you use. Yes, I did. Doshic influence. So,
Yes.
I like that because that brings that focus to what type of dosha and the influence that it's having on you, and how that particular can have a different influence on me versus someone else with a different dosha. And that's kind
Yes.
of the beauty of Ayurveda is knowing this about ourselves, so that we know how to shift and move along with those doshic influences. I wonder if in your experience, over time, if you've seen situations or circumstances that are happening on a larger scale, have you ever looked at those as the doshic influences that they perhaps have on us? There's a big one right now
Yes, there is.
going on, but I thought that would be interesting to hear your perspective on different circumstances in life, and what doshic influences do you see in those?
Yes, when you ask that question, Helen, it makes me think about our moods and our emotions, maybe more the way our minds work. And in light of pandemic, we are responding, of course, based on our doshic nature. And in a very general classification, and then remember, Ayurveda is not pinpointing. It has so many possibilities. So let me just say this is very general to say that people that are more dominantly Vata type by their nature tend to become more anxious more easily, more nervous, perhaps a bit more fearful. Remember, they're ether and air, and in that respect, they could be very, more delicate or more fragile in their mind or their emotions. Um, and so the same, a person who is Vata by nature right now might be experiencing more fear, more anxiety than another person in their family, or somebody that they're communicating with or staying in touch with that is more Pitta type. Pitta dominant people, by their mind and emotional tendencies, they're proactive. They're going to get rid of this thing if they can. I don't know, this thing meaning anything, not just the pandemic, but they, if not able to get on the other side of something or get in control of something, they might even start to get irritated and aggravated, frustrated, and maybe just downright angry, that they cannot effectively make a difference. So a person that is more kapha, by nature, their tendency under stress, and certainly this is pandemic is a major stressor for us all in so many levels of our being and our experience, is their tendency could be more to detach, to go within, to just become quiet. Remember, we're talking earth and water elements, so they're going to kind of bury in by nature, and maybe even more what we would call, depressed. So we all respond differently to everything, and that's just the mind and emotions of the individual. Um, and this is unfortunately, an example of how we are, as a world globally, responding quite differently. but we're all responding within our nature. Ayurveda, remember I had mentioned that each dosha has its own inherent strengths and weaknesses. So we have our potential just laid out for us. But with understanding, we can help to manage those strengths from becoming excessive, and we can help manage the weaker sides of us from, creating deficiencies or disorders. So that's always the beautiful other side of a conversation when we're describing Ayurveda, is what we can do about it. And Ayurveda offers that as well. So a Vata type during this time would do well to learn, some breathing techniques, or to, eat food that is more warming, heavy, nourishing. And I'm sure you're going to be going over some of these beautiful ideas and recommendations this weekend, where a Pitta type, they may do well to find some things that help diffuse this pent up, heat under pressure is not, it's usually, explosive. So they need to do things that help disperse the heat, and it could be actually through a physical activity that will help sweat it out, but also things that are cooling, like water with mint, and fennel leaf in there. And then the kapha type, because of their nature to go within, and maybe in a way that, there's a certain amount, Pink Floyd would say, denial is, it's okay, but, but it's my nature. I'm sorry. You're just meeting me. This is who I am. But there is, of course, a point that inward action can become, um, harmful. And so at that rate, it may be, though, a person reaching out to that kapha person and saying, I'm here with you. We're in this together. Let's do it. Let's talk. Let's get it out. And then they would do well to, mask up and keep their distance and walk out in nature, with the person, that kind of thing. So yeah, Ayurveda definitely recognizes the influences that we are in, collectively, and how we tend to respond to them accordingly, and how we need different things. One person needs to rest, the other person needs to run. you know
Thank you so much for that.
You're
I was
welcome.
just telling Cynthia that I had a thought of us doing a poll, but while we're doing that, I was going to ask you a question, and then we can see what the results of the poll, because I'm really curious how everyone feels that they are, how they are going through the pandemic, and where they feel they are on the scale of how they are responding, and if they are able to recognize the dosha and how it's influenced. So I thought that would be interesting to do for a poll. But while I get that ready, I did have another question, and if you all have questions, so please put them in the Q&A so that we can either read them out, or if you want to speak it, we can also unmute you, so you can do that. um, Lastly, because you kind of touched upon this a little bit, when we're thinking of, there could be a tendency sometimes that we want to pick a particular dosha because we feel it seems better than than our own dosha. Oh, this dosha seems to be a little better. They have a little more creativity. I kind of like that better. Or to see, and you touched on how there are inherent strengths and weaknesses to each. And you touched about the three gunas, the sattvic, tamasic, or well, I use that word, but sattva, rajas, and tamas. Would you briefly share in a way that, I know that's going really deep into Ayurveda, but I thought if you would share a little bit about those qualities and what makes sometimes a particular quality be a strength or a weakness because of the quality or the force that's behind it. Would you share that a little bit?
Yes. So il- Ayurveda, as you mentioned, I mean, it is simple in its concepts, but it is deep. It is rich, and that's why a person can study this for 16 months, and yet it's still only the beginning of discovery in Ayurveda. But it is beautifully simple, on a certain level, and applicable. So our tendencies, remember where I want to start answering your question is remember that you are born for a purpose. You are not here if you didn't have a purpose and a reason for being here. And ultimately, it is to expand, it is to evolve, it is to um, serve, it is to give back, not only to ourselves, to our families, our communities, our world, but ultimately the cosmos. And with that said, there is not a good or bad dosha. I mean, it takes all types to be able uh, to affect this, And see, your question was so provoking. It's making me want to go right back to origin, right up to the cosmos. But perhaps another time. Where I will bring this though with the gunas is that each dosha, based on its natural strengths and weaknesses, when we are in a more sattvic state, and sattva, and its most general, explanation is to say it is the sweet, pure, enlightened state. Now, it doesn't mean that it is the good state versus a bad state. We say in that the rajasic or rajas is action, and it's where things happen. Things need to happen, right? Tamas is where things slow down and can actually start to go into inertia. Well, sometimes we need to slow down. So there's not a good or bad guna, but each dosha is in their most productive, most harmonious state when they are under the influence of sattva. Sattva is the clear, enlightened way. And these are choices that we make in our day. Everything from, the food that we eat, is it more stimulating food? Is it food that will just knock you out, dull you down? Or is it food that puts you in just this, you know, um, clear, enlightened state? So everything that we do in a day, just like the doshas, we have a guna effect as well. And sattva is the way that keeps the mind consciousness in a most balanced place where the doshas will also be in their most productive place. Was that helpful? Again, it's such a deep subject. I thought, how can I put this into, the encapsulation?
Thank you, Denise. Yes, I
Of
know that
course.
it will take. We could go forever and ever, and
I
so
know.
there's so much beauty, and so I'm thankful for the way that you're explaining it to all of us that aren't as familiar with
Certainly.
Ayurveda. So I did put the poll out, so if you're able to see that, because I was curious based on what Denise mentioned about how the different doshas respond in terms of doshic influences, things happening around us, and how this pandemic has been. I put the question out to see how you feel based on what Denise said, that you responded to the pandemic. Did you have a vata response, a pitta response, or a kapha response based on what she shared? And so we have about 50% voted. So I'll wait to get all the answers to then share those results back with you. And then Cynthia does have a question that was asked in the Q&A, so she'll address that.
So we have a question from Yolanda. This is such an excellent question. Wow. How does air conditioner affect our dosha? And I mean, it's to me that's such a smart question because we're constantly, especially down here in Florida, under air conditioning.
Mhm. That is, thank you, Yolanda. So it depends. So air conditioning, we laugh because every question starts with the answer, it depends in Ayurveda. But the air conditioning itself would just look at its qualities. It's clearly cold and dry. That's the idea. It's to take the humidity out of the room and for it to be, temperature cool. Now, for a person that is pitta type who runs hot and maybe even sweaty, air conditioning could actually be quite balancing for them. And if a person is vata, though, that has those same cool, dry qualities, it will make them colder and drier. It literally, I mean, they might be the person, in an office space with the air conditioning that's wearing the sweater, when the pitta is walking around in their tank top. So it just really, it depends. Now, Ayurveda promotes, of course, fresh, natural air, no doubt, because it's just rich with prana, life force energy. But the actual qualities, we just say it's vata type, so it would increase vata. It would help to decrease pitta. And kapha is, they're well insulated. We say that they're heavy, earth nature. They tend to be more insulated, so they can kind of weather the heat or the cool easier than the other two doshas.
Thank you, Denise.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like, um, based on what you shared, with how the doshic response during the pandemic, there was a leader. I'm just kidding. Vata's in the lead for
Okay.
67%
Wow.
had a Vata response, 50% had a Pitta response, and 33%. Oh, it just changed. Oh, we have a tie. Okay, so it's Vata and Pitta. 57% Vata, 57% Pitta, and 29% Kapha in response to the pandemic. So, would you expand, just remind us briefly what you shared about that kind of balancing for those?
Yes. So those of you who are experiencing, let me start by just mentioning very briefly that the you have your physical tendencies, characteristics, your mind and your emotional characteristics can change even easier. Our bodies can change too, for sure, but the mind, it can fluctuate and emotions can fluctuate so much easier. So even if you don't normally have this vata tendency right now, if you're experiencing, and 57% of you are, more perhaps anxiety or nervousness or fears or worry, even just worry, during this pandemic, we'd say all the more important that you follow a regular routine. It might be easier said than done, but it would be so beneficial to have a certain time that you're getting up in the day, even if your schedule has changed greatly, that you have these in regimens that you're going to be learning about this weekend that you're doing. And yes, pranayam, breathing techniques. I'm sure Jill is going to be sharing some with you as well. Alternate nostril breathing, eating warm and unctuous foods, especially during this time of year. It makes sense. Those of you who are more pitta responsive to this, you're getting irritated and frustrated and maybe even angry sometimes about all of this, then you really, it would be beneficial to see what you can do. Pittas need to know that there's something they can do, and then do that. If you have a firm idea that this is helpful, this has helped moving us all along, then you're going to naturally want to do that. But just make sure, yes, you're doing that. But then do things to help diffuse the excess pitta, and that can be lying under the moon, getting lunar energy. It could be, well, let's talk pranayam. We could just breathe through the left nostril, cooling lunar energy, chandra pranayam. Um, have discussions, be able to have some kind of relief valve for the things that you might be feeling before they get too pent up and seem explosive. And then finally, for kapha type of potential, which was more drawing in or withdrawing, detaching, maybe even going into a state of depression. Um, Sometimes kappas need outside help. It isn't there of the three potential, they're the ones that are more likely to go within and stay there. So my hope is that you have someone in your life that you could just say, I need help. And then they will be there for you. And then you'll talk. And like I said, being more active, literally getting you out of that stagnant, heavy earth pulling state will be helpful. So maybe you can arrange a time to go out in the fresh air and move around, and talk while you're walking. Wear your mask. And also the sun breath, the Surya Pranayam, breathing through the right nostril. If we're just going to, you carry your breath with you, you never leave home without it. So just the way we're breathing can help balance the doshas, in that moment of that thought or that feeling.
And we have one more question. This one's from Artie. And the question is it possible that one quality is dominant in terms of personality and another one is dominant in the nature of our body?
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. It would be kind of nice if it all fit into the same little picture. And sometimes it does, but no, you might have a pitta vata body type. You might be a medium height, but thinner limbs, maybe lighter toned skin that burns easily in the sun, and but thinner curly hair. So those are all things about both pitta and vata. And yet you might have a mind type that is more like kapha. You might take longer to bring things in. You want to take longer to roll them around and before you have to make a decision. But once you've made a decision, you're usually pretty firm on it. And once you have that information, you always have it. You retain it. So yes, you might very well, and that can be a little confusing because a lot of times if a person maybe takes a questionnaire that they saw in a magazine or online, and they're just asking these questions, they relate a lot to the way they think and feel, and they might answer a lot of their questions accordingly. But it's important to realize that way your body, the way you look, your features, and the way you function, your physiology, as well as your mind and emotions, could be this is where my pitta comes out. This is where my vata is. Oh, there's my kapha. So yes, it can be displayed all. In fact, we're all, because we have all three doshas, we are more commonly dual dosha by nature, meaning you have two doshas that are pretty strong influencing you all the time versus a person that is like single dosha. They still clearly have the other two doshas in their makeup, but one is so strong, that it is the main or single leader.
Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question to Denise before we close this session? Just watching to see if anyone. Um, Denise, I just want to thank you. And of course, I have my own opinion because I got to study with you for a whole year and a half. So, of course, I say you always so beautifully share and make it so easy to digest. To speak about the way that I take information in. I'm definitely more kapha in the way that I absorb information. So Denise has known that for in class. I'm also the one that fell asleep. She had to call me. Actually, it was Kevin. He's like, Helen, Helen.
No,
But
me, I just let you sleep.
yeah,
I
she
just
just
let
let
you
you. Yeah, it
sleep.
was Kevin.
I knew you were
No,
hearing.
the information is going in,
Mhm.
but it's so I process in the kapha way. So I have to hear it more than once. I have to, it's an auditory and then visual. Plus, I have to apply it. I have to use it with my hands. Then it really comes. And so, with such care and patience and the knowledge that you have of the way that we all learn, again, today you've definitely shared that information across the dosha so that we can all absorb that information. So, thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us today and kicking us off for our weekend retreat for self care. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Namaste.